Hi guys, you're here with me, Jen the Taxidermy Witch, and we are talking more on Conjure from this book, Old Style Conjure, Hoodoo Rootwork and Folk Magic by Star Casas. And in particular, we are in the chapter where we're talking about the spiritual ancestors of Conjure. Now, I just told you guys about Big Mama, and now I'm on to some biblical spiritual ancestors of Conjure, and that is St. Peter, Moses, and we'll also be talking about the prophet Elijah. Okay? Because I don't know if you've watched any of my other chapters yet, or videos yet on this Conjure series, but when we talk about the word ancestors, that doesn't mean my personal ancestors. No. In Conjure, ancestors mean the slaves that originally came from Africa to North America, and they brought their magical practice, and then they were also forced to be Christians by their slave owners. So they had to hide their magical practice within the Christian Bible, so that they could still practice what they were, but hide it within something. And Conjure, from what I read in this book, is all about hiding something in plain sight. So, if you conjure, a part of Conjure, what makes Conjure Conjure is the Bible. And if you take out the Bible, it's still a working. It's just not Conjure, okay? So, we'll start by saying that, and if you don't like this topic, then just watch anything else on my channel, because most of it does not have to do with Christianity. But Conjure does, and so that's why it makes it a little bit of a taboo topic in witchcraft. But I have a lot of people that are excited that I'm talking about it, and I'm excited I'm talking about it. Because I grew up loving Jesus, and I think that it molded me into a really beautiful, warm person, because my parents were kind Christians. And my dad was a Catholic, but that's a long story. And they accept any religion I've ever decided to follow in my adult life. Great people they are, Don and Peggy. So let's just say that, and then I would love to hear comments on your views on Christianity and witchcraft, on Conjure, on this taboo, if you will, topic. But let's just start getting in and talking about St. Peter, otherwise known as Cephus, C-E-P-H-A-S. Cephus means rock in Aramaic, the language of Jesus. In most versions of the New Testament, Cephus is translated into the Greek Peter. I include it here to in honor of my granddaddy, whose nickname was Cephus, and also because I think that it's important for folks to know. Absolutely. Feast day, June 29th. St. Peter was one of the first disciples, and he was a hot mess. He was very outspoken, even brash at times. He was not only one of Jesus' favorites, but they were also very good friends. Peter was very strong-willed. Maybe this had something to do with Jesus choosing him to be a part of the foundation of the church. If you look at Galatians 2, verse 9, you will see that James, Cephus, and John were perceived as the pillars of the church. And then it goes on to read some things out of the Bible, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that it's Galatians 2, verse 9, and then if you'd like to look that up, please feel free. Some folks claim that saints are all sugary and nice. I'm not sure I believe that. In Acts 5, verse 1 through 11, we see that St. Peter killed a husband and his wife because they lied about the price they sold their land for. To say that he is not dangerous to work with is just silly. He is very powerful and was given the power to bind things in heaven. Look at Matthew 16, verse 19, which says that whatever Peter binds on earth is also bound in heaven. So to me, that means whatever work he does on earth can't be undone because it's also bound in heaven. Matthew 16, verse 19, and then it goes on to say the verse. All door opening works or crossroads work can be given to St. Peter. I'll say that again. All door opening works or crossroad works can be given to St. Peter. This means that anything you need to draw or to remove or block from your life can be given to St. Peter. In the old days, folks would get a picture of him and place it behind their door. If you want to work with St. Peter, you can just print out a picture of him from the internet. I have found that the one of him upside down on the cross works best. Some folks think that he is the devil and that is why he was crucified upside down. But that is absolutely not true. He was crucified upside down because he didn't feel he was worthy to be hung upright like Jesus was. I work with him a lot on many different issues, and he has never let me down. Now that last part about him being upside down on the cross is such like a beautiful devotion to who he was a disciple of, you know, in my opinion. And it's a great way to honor his prophet or his God or his God's son. Okay, and now we're on to Moses. Played by Charlton Heston in the movie The Ten Commandments. Charlton Heston being in biblical movies to me is fun and interesting because it's totally ironic. Because there were no guns in biblical times. And he's like the head of the National Rifle Association of America or something. I don't know. I just think it's funny, though. He is quite a striking man, though. So yeah, and he played Moses. Moses, God's two-headed worker. Moses has been regarded as one of the most powerful conjure workers ever born. Since the days of slavery, conjure workers have looked to him for power and guidance because Moses spoke directly to God. He is the only living person who was allowed to see God. He was allowed to see God's back. Because of his faith in God and the fact that he allowed God to use him to help his people, Moses was ordained with many gifts through which miracles took place. God used Moses to restore faith in people and lead them to the promised land. Moses had a lot of trials and tribulations in his life. Right from the beginning, in Exodus 2, tells the story of how his mama had to place him in a small boat and put him in the reeds of the river so that he wouldn't be found. And I'm not going to read that Bible verse, but it's there. And then it says, he refused to claim the Pharaoh's daughter as his mother, as you can read in Hebrew 11, verse 24 through 25. More Bible verses. You can look those up. Of course, this started a whole big mess. Moses was gifted by God to have the power of faith and prayer. Pharaoh wouldn't give up and was constantly going against God's law. Moses had a lowdown. Moses had a throwdown with Pharaoh's magicians because they challenged God's authority. Moses, like all God's folks, had a mission assigned to him by the Spirit of God. Moses was sent by God to deliver his people and set them free. He worked his conjure stick, or to hammer Pharaoh and his army. Conjure stick looks like a big walking stick, like a wizard stick, you know. By his calling on God, Moses' conjure stick turned into a snake and swallowed the rods of Pharaoh's magicians, which had also turned into snakes. Wow. This tells us that Moses can defeat any enemy, known or unknown. And if you can do workings with snakes and defeat snakes as a human, I believe that you have supernatural powers. Or just like some deep-rooted old magic within your bones, you know? Like you've done it before, you've been a really high, you know, priestess in another life, or a high priest. Just my thoughts at the moment, you know? But it is something I think about. Conjure stick. This tells us that Moses can defeat any enemy, known or unknown. Moses can be petitioned for any situation where you need a helping hand. If you feel defeated or left in the desert, or maybe you feel deserted, Moses is the one to petition and call upon for help. He will lead you out of despair and into the land of milk and honey. Really, really like that. Really like that this book is giving us specific things to use or ask or call upon these ancestors for. And I didn't know that there were going to be ancestors in here that weren't slaves from Africa. But as I say, I like to read this with you guys and kind of like ponder over my first thoughts while we're talking and while we're reading. And one of my really good friends, not really good friends, but becoming one of my good friends who also has a YouTube channel, and she's in Scotland, and I forget the name of her channel, but she's goes by something like the Hag Witch. I will link her channel below, though, for sure. I'll link it in the description. Make a note of that. But I like her stuff so well, and she told me, don't, I have to write it down or I'll forget. And she said, I said something like, yeah, I feel silly reading full books to people. And she's like, a lot of people don't have time or money or the time to actually sit down and look at a book to read. You know, a lot of people don't have that in their life. So by you reading, you know, full books or most of full books to people, or majority of full books to people, I'm doing a great service. So the author is obviously the one doing the great service, but if I can do any kind of service for somebody, it makes me feel really happy. So, to my Hag Witch friend, which I will say properly on my channel the next time, as soon as I look it up, thank you very much for reminding me of that. Not everybody has the time or access or just ability to be reading books all the time. Alright, and so to the next one that we're on to, now that we're done with Moses, ouch, is we're on to the prophet Elijah. It got a little dark, didn't it? Elijah is one of God's very powerful prophets. God gave Elijah the power to take a life or to bring the dead back to life. Necromancy? Is that what that's called? God also gave Elijah the power to make fire fall from the sky. The old folks will tell you that Elijah rode a flaming chariot and horses to heaven. In 2 Kings, it tells us that Elijah was with his son when God called Elijah home. And it goes on to read 2 Kings 2, verse 8 through 11. In 1 Kings 17, we are told that God brought the great drought on the land. The ravens kept Elijah alive while he was waiting on God to decide what to do. God said, "Get away from here and turn eastward and hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. 4, and it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there." He trusted God with an undeniable faith, even when there was no food or water. His faith that God would take care of him never wavered. This whole thing started because which makes me think also that if you're having trouble with faith, ask Elijah to restore your faith. And that could be faith in anything. That could be faith in yourself, faith in your religion, whatever religion that is, Christianity, Wicca, something else. Your faith in humanity, your faith in anything. So I'm going to add in my intuition, you could use Elijah to restore faith. And who knows if we'll read that at the end. Maybe we will. Restore. Let me grab a candle real quick, guys. So when you use these new holders like I got, these kinds, in order to get the candle in there, it has to kind of have like a taper on the bottom like this. You can just get a knife and carve a taper into it. But I pull them a little early from these so that when they're short like this, because I use the short ones for this candle. When this burns down, I just put another one on top of it, and a big one is just too much, so I save these. And I have a box of just shorties to put in there. So yeah, just a little tidbit in the middle of my video. Sorry. And also when they like jam into the bottom like that, then you don't have to drip wax in there. Let's see how that goes. Okay, back on track. Okay, and we're talking about Elijah, and we were talking about how I believe that he can be a good ancestor to call upon to restore your faith, or if you're having trouble with faith. Not in just religion, but faith in yourself, faith in humanity, anything. Elijah, restoration of faith. That is from my intuition, not from this little book here. Okay. This whole thing started because Jezebel, I love that name, who was King Ahab's wife, began to order the death of God's prophets. Of course, God didn't appreciate this, so he sent Elijah in. King Ahab wouldn't listen to God, though, so God ordered a drought, no rain in sight. The problem with Jezebel was she worshipped the god Baal, B-A-A-L. She didn't like Elijah talking about his God and how powerful he was, so in 1 Kings, we see she sent him a challenge, which he gladly picked up. It goes on to read 1 Kings 19, verse 1 and 2. Um, the battle is on. He accepts the challenge, and not only does he offer to battle Jezebel, he also battles her priest and her god Baal. Want to know what happens next? Check out 1 Kings and 2 Kings. The prophet Elijah is like a double-edged sword. Or an atame, eh? Atame? How do we say that word? Everybody says it different than I do, so I'm like, but I call it my atame, or atame. The battle is on. He accepts the challenge, and not only does he offer to battle Jezebel, he also battles her priest and her god Baal. Want to know what happens next? The prophet Elijah is like a double-edged sword. He can be gentle, as he was with the widow who fed him, or he can bring fire raining from the sky. He will serve up justice with his mighty sword and defend you against your enemies. Okay, the next one is Queen of the Waters. So we will be coming back for that. In this episode, we talked about Conjure, in particular, our spiritual ancestors of Conjure. And we talked about, was it St. Peter? We talked about St. Peter, also known as Cephus, Cephas. We talked about Moses, God's two-headed worker. And we talked about the prophet Elisha. Please make sure to comment and let me know how you guys are enjoying this Conjure series and how comfortable or interested or uncomfortable or uninterested you are about the topic of Christianity and witchcraft and how it applies, because it does, or it can, and it will if you want it to. You don't have to abandon Jesus as one of your gods, because that's kind of the beauty of witchcraft. You can follow many gods and work with many gods, and none of them are upset by it, from what I know. All my love, thanks for joining me, Jen the Taxidermy Witch, and come back so we can learn more about Conjure and the spiritual ancestors of Conjure.